Go live. Check, check. Mom! Mom! Can you go into the stream? Tell me if you can hear me. Go into the stream and tell me if the volume's good.
Oh, I thought you were taking a nap.
No. Yeah, what's up, guys? If anybody in here would mind commenting and let me know how the volume is, I would really appreciate it. So it looks like we have sent another aircraft carrier. The USS Gorge W. Bush has... This autofocus is terrible, man. Thank you, Meta. I love you. I miss you very much. Miss you very much. Give me 2 seconds while I am sharing it all over every Facebook group that I possibly can. If you guys don't mind, if you could do the same for me, I would really appreciate it. Give me a couple minutes here, guys. Guys, give me 2 seconds. I'm not looking at Streamlabs, so I don't know what's going on in the stream. Give me a second. Give me 2 seconds. We're gonna get it going. Sorry. almost there. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. Coming. I'm coming. Almost there. You know, it would be so much easier if I had enough viewers where I could hire a producer to do all this stuff for me so I don't have to do it by myself on the fly. So if you guys would hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, maybe I could do that one day. But unfortunately, today is definitely not that day. But we'll get there. We will get there. I promise you that. You know why? Because I am determined. Not only am I determined, but I think everybody is a little tired of what's going on. And I think everybody is realizing that other than Thomas Massey and our girl Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't think there's a single person in Congress that truly cares about the American people. And that is a goddamn shame. And the only way to rectify this problem is not by sitting out the midterms. It is by doing research, finding out who is not taking money from AIPAC or any of the Zionist NGOs or however they donate money. And getting some real America First candidates in places that matter. Not that I think our elections are even legit anymore, but it's the best chance we got. It's the best chance we got until we see a full-fledged revolution in this country. And nobody wants to see that. it would be absolutely horrible for our country. But the more that this goes on, and the more that it's exposed how the Zionist agenda is put above America first, I think more and more people are going to get tired of what's going on. I could be wrong. Could be wrong. It could be because I am in a echo chamber of sorts, but I listen to a lot of people, and it seems like the majority of people that voted for Donald Trump this election are all feeling the same way. Like we got lied to, we were played, we were gaslit, we were taken advantage of, and it was all for our greatest ally. None of it was for us. What has the Trump administration done to make the lives of the average American citizen better? That's my question, honestly. Like, have they done anything at all, to make your life or my life better? And I'm going to say they haven't. You could fight me on that if you want. I'm open for debate. But I don't think so. I don't think so. So we are going to go to breaking points. Oh, this is these headlines are not good. Headlines are not good. So we're going to start off with the White House refusing to rule out the draft for Iran. Give me 1 second.
For beginners. Even if you have zero experience, you can use their AI tools and intuitive editing features to create a professional looking result. You can get transcriptions automatically and use them to edit like a doc, or you can use the chapter timeline feature to make
sound
it
on the
easier
clip
just
sound?
to skim and scan.
Is the volume coming
Ready to
through
share?
okay?
Well,
Too
it's
low?
okay if you don't have an audience yet. Everybody starts
Do I
somewhere,
sound
and
good? Does the
Riverside
clip
has
sound
perfect
good?
tools to help you grow your audience, like live streaming if you're into that, or you can use their AI tools to create automated short clips that you can post on YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok to increase your engagement.
Somebody let me know
Your
in the
podcast
comments
really
how the
is
volume
just
is.
one click away
Please.
with Riverside. Just bring your idea, we'll do the rest. Try it now, it's free.
Morning, everybody. Happy Monday.
Here we
have
go.
a great show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. Once again, we're going to be covering the Iran war from every aspect. Trump out with some new comments saying that it will be a mutual decision between us and Israel when this war ends. So that's pretty interesting. We've also got Trump's disrespectful display at the dignified transfer of service member remains. We'll show you that and how Fox News tried to cover it up. Water sources are now being attacked. This is extraordinarily dire for a region that does not have sufficient fresh water there locally. So we'll break down what that means for the war.
Okay, so anybody that doesn't know, the Gulf countries, very, very little fresh water. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Israel, Iran, they all rely on desalination plants to turn salt water into fresh water for their population to drink. And of course, it was the Americans who started attacking Iranian civil infrastructure, civilian targets, to try to cut off the water supply to 90 million people. That sounds like when somebody is losing a fight and they decide to kick you in the nuts. That's what it sounds like. We're not having success anywhere else. Let's cut off their water supply. The American military might. They're doing great.
An escalation. We're also going to have an oil analyst on to take a look at what skyrocketing oil prices mean for the entire economy. Extremely dire warnings from a very sober-minded analyst, so you definitely want to listen to that one. A new supreme leader has been chosen. Shrita Parsi is going to join us to break down what that means and also what happened with Iran's attempted de-escalation in the region. Jeffrey Sachs believes we are already in a world war. We will discuss and debate. And Lindsey Graham is a psychopathic war hawk and also apparently a traitor, according to new reporting. So definitely want to know about that one.
Right. Even the Iranians are like, hey, man, if somebody did this over here, we would just, we would put them on trial for treason. So there you go. All right. Thank you to everybody who has been supporting, signing up for the show, breakingpoints.com. We do have our free month trial going on right now. You can put it up there on the screen. Promo code is BPFree26. Seriously, a thank you to all of you who have joined. We have had literally millions of new people who've joined us in the last week. Last week, every single day was like a new single-day record for the show with views and/or podcast downloads. So seriously, thank you. If you cannot afford it, no worries. Or if you don't want to try it, since you don't even have to afford anything, just please hit subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, please share an episode with a friend. It really helps other people find the show, especially if they want to know what's going on with Iran. But as you said, let's start with these new comments from Donald Trump, the president, on board Air Force One on returning from that dignified transfer of the fallen American service members. Here he is talking about boots on the ground, refusing to rule it out. Let's take a listen.
Do you think the map of Iran will look the same?
The war is complicated enough without getting the Kurds involved.
And do you think the map of Iran looks the same after this is all done?
That I can't tell you. Probably not.
What are the circumstances where you send in ground troops? How are you thinking about that?
I don't even want to talk about it now. I mean, that's. I don't think it's an appropriate question. I'm not going to answer it. Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level. A lot of negotiating leverage, maybe maximum, but we're not looking to settle. They'd like to settle. We're not looking to settle. They're on their third or fourth level of leadership. And they have leaders right now that nobody even knows who they are. They're being decimated now. You know, at some point, I don't think there'll be anybody left maybe to say we surrender, but they're being decimated.
Some Iranians are concerned that the Kurds will carve out kind of an autonomous region as they did in Syria and Iraq.
Just so everybody knows, Iran has a plan in place. They are fully decentralized. So every region of the country has their orders, and they are going to follow those orders until the very end. They have had 20 years of watching the Americans fight in Afghanistan and Iraq, both of them directly on their borders. So Iran has been preparing for this for a very, very long time. The United States has been preparing for this for about 3 weeks. The difference on the battlefield is extremely noticeable.
We're not looking to the Kurds going in. We're very friendly with the Kurds, as you know, but we don't want to make the war any more complex than it already is. No.
Rule that out.
We don't want, I have ruled it out. I don't want the Kurds going in. I don't want to see the Kurds get hurt, get killed. We've had a good relation. They're willing to go in, but I've told them I don't want them to go in.
So completely all over the map comments, but the most noteworthy one is not ruling out boots on the ground, saying if we did do, I mean, you can see, it's probably going to happen now at this point. But secondary to that are these imperial comments at the very top that we showed you. Crystal, him saying that the map is not going to look the same. And even though he is talking there about, quote, ruling out the Kurds, he didn't rule out the Kurds. The Kurds ruled it out themselves. The Iraqi Kurds were like, hey, man, we want no part of this. And I'll say why. Because they're right in the range of all of these short-range missiles. The Iranians have already been firing stuff at them, including the U.S. bases. They have no appetite for some Iran-Iraq war redux. Remember, at one point was, I think, one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history. Almost nobody ever pays any attention to it, but over 1 million people died in that conflict. They want nothing to do with any sort of incursion which will put them at risk. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to have all kinds of CIA-sponsored groups inside of the country, potentially the Iranian Kurds who are already there, could be armed. The Turks obviously would get involved. But the comment there, I mean, at every turn, all this man does is make it even more existential for the people of Iran. The map is not going to look... What would you do if somebody said that? Imperially decided we're going to redraw your borders like it's some Sykes-Picot time, which, by the way, they're talking about in Israel. In Israel, they're like, hey, it's Sykes-Picot. Again, it's an opportunity to redraw the maps of the Middle East. You will fight to the death, will you not? I mean, that's if we're going to burn your oil supplies, we're going to talk about here in a bit. We are going to drop bombs all over, collapse the police forces, kill the Ayatollah, sponsor some third-party groups, and the president says we're going to redraw your map. What do you think that they're going to do as a result of this? This is an attack on the polity itself, not just on the regime, on the entire nation state of an idea of Iran. So yeah, they're almost certainly going to just continue to use this, especially Iranian state propaganda. There's been no widespread protests, despite the fact that everybody promised it. And at every turn, all he is doing is turning the switch up for escalation, which of course is disastrous for them, disastrous for us. And another American service member was just confirmed KIA in the operation, not to mention for the Iranian people and especially for everybody else in the region. It just means wider war is even more likely.
Yeah, and you've had, in addition to those 7 officially KIA, you have 2 others who have died, one allegedly of a medical episode, the other allegedly of an accident. And then, there are a number of injuries. There's a hospital that's been closed for labor and delivery to handle the wounded U.S. service members coming out of Iran. So that's already where we are. I also have to just say, for these diaspora Iranian monarchists, what a fool you thought that Trump really cared about freedom for the Iranian people. The people who were the biggest critics of the Iranian regime are in Tehran, and now they're having oil rain down on them, apocalyptic fires, it genuinely looks like a literal movie of a hellscape. That's your Iranian freedom. I'm sure the women are really grateful for their kids breathing in toxic fumes that are probably going to cause them to have cancer 10 or 20 years in the future. And meanwhile, you have Trump coming out and saying, yeah, Iran will probably break apart. I mean, just absolute insanity. And it speaks to the fact that the goal now is Israel's goal. It's civil war, it's regime collapse, it's chaos. The only reason, as you said, the Kurds aren't getting involved also is not only are they worried about the danger, but they're like, listen, you people have, especially Trump in particular, have screwed us over multiple times in the past. Like, how many times are we going to have to get the fell for it again?
We have sent the Kurds in, I think, 3 times now, I want to say. And all throughout these different wars, the Gulf War, the Iraq War, Afghanistan, and we have told them that we are going to back them up, and we have left them high and dry every freaking time. So, you can't blame the Kurds for not believing a fucking thing that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth, because everything he says is a lie. So, I can't blame them for not taking his word for it. But that's just me.
Again award before we say, you know what, this battle is yours, go, good luck, we'll see what happens on the other side of it. So that's where things stand as of right now. I want to go ahead and play this next piece, which is extraordinarily significant. So it has now been confirmed that it was the U.S. that struck that girls' school and murdered those 168 children, mostly girls ages 7 to 12. There have been multiple analyses, and now we have actual video of the Tomahawk missile. Those come from us, not from Israel, not from Iran. Those come from us. Okay, Tomahawk missile that was dropped on that school. And recall also there's reporting this was a double tap strike. So in any case, this is now incontrovertible. You know, as much as you can learn anything definitively in war, we now know that this is the case. Trump gets asked about it, and what does he do? He just outright lies. Let's take a listen.
Excuse me, sir, how old were you when you made your first million?
What is this for?
We're trying to get advice for the younger generation.
I made my first million last.
Did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hegseth? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done. We think it was done by Iran.
It wasn't done by Iran. It was done by the United States. The video clearly shows a U.S. Tomahawk missile that hits the girls' school. Chances are the intelligence for that came from our greatest ally, knowing that it was a girls' school, because they have Mossad agents all over the country. And it was another tactic that they use in Gaza. Kill the kids. Kill the kids. The more dead kids, the better. I am convinced that Bibi at this point is a fucking homicidal maniac. 100%. The dude is out of his mind. He is attacking Lebanon now. He is moving to invade there. This dude is out of his mind. And they really have gotten in Trump's head and made him believe that he is anointed by God to facilitate the building of the third temple on the Temple Mount, which is the current location of the Dome of the Rock, which is in the top 3 holiest sites in the Muslim religion. Does anybody else see where that could go terribly wrong? there's about 2 billion Muslims in the world, 2 billion Christians in the world, and 14 million Jews. And roughly 8.5 million of them live in Israel. So, if they want to turn this into a religious war, I would think that they would need to convert a lot more people to Judaism, because their numbers aren't mathing.
Because they're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran.
Disgusting.
Okay, by the way, no accuracy whatsoever. The Iranians are receiving real-time telemetry data from the Chinese, who has their most advanced radar and signal ship parked in international waters in the Gulf, and they are feeding the Iranians real-time intelligence on locations, on missile defenses, on radars. And this is how Iran has been so successful in taking out strategic targets. Because Iran doesn't have any of those eyes in the sky, but China and Russia do. And it would be advantageous of them to not allow Iran to be completely destroyed and just left in chaos. So the Chinese are pretty brazenly feeding this intelligence to the Iranians, and it has been very successful.
So you saw that Pete Hegseth won't back him up on that.
He said, "Oh, there's an investigation."
The ones who are investigating it.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, as you said, there's a video. It's literally a Tomahawk missile. There's only one person in the entire conflict that uses a Tomahawk missile. So last time I checked, that's the only time that it could have happened. And all of the background on the strike makes sense. Not to devolve too much, but it shows you the danger. And also, I've always warned about this with air campaigns and everything. It was like, oh, the most sophisticated military. I'm not denying that, but also there's a lot of error. So let's say you have this IRGC base, which has a school attached to it, right? And years ago, it was only IRGC and it wasn't a school. Well, it's very obvious that they didn't update whatever their strike package was. And whoever's programming these coordinates into the Tomahawk, they have no idea. They're getting passed on by the Pentagon. So whoever it is that put that, coordinate into the strike package, sent it along to the Tomahawk, they're the ones who are responsible. In the old times, this is a massive scandal. I covered the Kunduz hospital incident in 2015. That was front page news of every paper in the country. The military, look, hated Obama and all of that, but there were still at least some rules and all of that at the time. And at the Pentagon, their feet were held to the fire whenever that hospital in Afghanistan was struck. This time around, it's like Tomahawk missile, video. You've got multiple geolocated pieces of evidence. By the way, the military themselves are leaking to Reuters and to everybody else. They're like, yeah, it was probably us, okay? And now, if they never confirm it and Trump is like, oh, it was Iran, which was some Israeli claim, just so everybody understands. That was a claim thrown around by Israel, literally completely fake. It's Gaza level stuff. Oh, it was a rocket that happened to come down.
From Hamas.
Bingo, exactly. It was a misfire that came down and they killed them. This is like a serious, shameful incident. Even Laura Ingraham is like, hey, somebody's head needs to roll for this, right? But this, this is the Gaza. This is what happens when we get in bed with the Israelis. We're going to adopt their tactics and their talking points. We're literally eroding our entire national sense of honor. In the Iraq War, I can tell you this right now. This might have happened, but seriously, something actually would have happened at the military command level. You think Hegseth and Trump are going to do anything? Zero.
Of course
okay,
not.
It's disgraceful.
we are hitting civilian targets in Iran as well. We upped the ante last night by striking a desalination plant, which is how 90 million people get fresh water because there's a fresh water shortage all over the region. And it's pretty ballsy for us to do that when the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Kuwait, all of these countries have desalination plants, and all of them are in the wide open. So, the Trump administration pretty brazenly upped the ante last night, and I do not think that is going to go without consequence. I could be wrong, but I doubt it.
Yeah, the moment that the media stops asking them those
Right.
questions, we'll never hear about it.
we'll never
again.
hear about
That's
it
what's
again.
going to happen. And one last piece on this, because it's important, something we've been focused on. Very, very possible that AI, Anthropic's Claude in particular, was involved in picking this target. And so, you know, and I mean, which opens up a whole other basket of questions about the way AI is being utilized. We know that AI continues to hallucinate. You know, obviously this, begs the question of who was responsible if it was AI that picked it and there wasn't sufficient human involvement in review. So just horrifying.
Well, you can
horrifying.
easily see how it
First
happens.
day of the war.
You're like, hey, give me a list of IRGC bases. Here you go.
Yeah.
It just pulls from an old data
Old
set.
map, old
you don't
radar,
know.
whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And what? You've got 50 different strike how many? They said in the first day of the campaign that they did double the amount of strikes that they did in shock and awe in Iraq.
Yeah.
Right? So one strike was bad, but this is the problem. This
Yeah.
is why you're supposed to have people with, some actual intelligence and others looking it over, because a Tomahawk missile doesn't just fly somewhere without a serious level of checks in terms of people who are like, let's do the intelligence. Here we go. Here's the picture of it. This is why it needs to be struck. Here's its impact. And this, I mean, seriously, a massively shameful incident. Honestly, a huge besmirching on the entire honor of the United States. Let's put A3 up here next on the screen just to show you everything is rolling towards ground troops right now. I don't see a way out of it. NBC News, Trump has privately shown interest in U.S. ground troops in Iran. His comments have been focused on the idea of a small contingent of troops that will be used for specific purposes. Let's go to the next one just to continue to fill this out. This is from A4. There's been a cancellation of an Army exercise, quote, fueling speculation about Middle Eastern troop deployments. The elite 82nd Airborne Division, which specializes in ground combat and other fraught missions, is now awaiting new orders after an unexpected change of plans. The Army abruptly canceled this major training exercise. This is stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Brigade combat team of 4,000 to 5,000 soldiers ready to deploy on an 18-hour notice for missions as varied as seizing airfields and other critical infrastructure. So you could see paratroopers now who are getting involved here. And in fact, what we see initially is that some shape of what this strike would look like for ground troops. Let's put A6, please, on the screen. This is from friend Shelby Talcott over at Semaphore. Trump's Iran options include a special operations raid on nuclear sites. So what it would do is a special unit mission.
Guys, just so you know, reserve troops are being called and told to get their affairs in order with their families. I have friends still currently in the 101st that are getting deployed. I have friends that have been deployed in the last 48 hours. I do not believe any of the reporting coming from the mainstream media, at least, about how involved and how many troops we're really looking at bringing over there. Because if our National Reserve Guard troops, reserve troops, are being called to get their affairs in order, this campaign is going much, much longer than they were expecting. And that means it's going much, much worse than they were expecting.
Has long ready to, quote, counter WMD mission, where their job is to go in and get loose nuclear, loose nuclear material, fissile material, centrifuges, destroy them. And this is part of the folly of the entire thing. We're told that this is all about nuclear sites. Well, we've bombed some of the nuclear sites, but by U.S. intelligence's ground, and they can't get to it. They can't continue to bomb it. So to go and get it, what do you have to do? Boots on the ground. Just have some special operations team insert. When the Iranians know you're probably coming. That's why you would have the 82nd Airborne. So you're going to have to send thousands of troops in. So the special operation can do it. Those guys have to provide security, to be able to come in if anything goes awry, to airlift them out of here. You can easily see how much of a disaster that this could easily be inside. Yeah. What, you think that the Iranians don't read the news? What do you think they're going to do right now? They're going to surround that thing and turn it into, a death trap. And I'm not saying that we're not capable of doing something like this, but perhaps it would cost a lot of lives. And what's shocking too is the cavalier nature that they're already talking about death, not just of Iranians, but of Americans. With Iranians, Hegseth, he's a psychopath. He's like, anybody still alive, they may not be alive. He's literally like a video game character. And actually, I do think it's worth meditating here on the White House's propaganda. Everything is like Iron Man, Tropic Thunder, like they're trying to meme this into existence. It's some of the worst aspects of like 2003, rah-rah Americanism, which South Park used to do such a good job of parodying. But to show how insane things are in the White House, they will not even rule out a draft, okay? So A5, let's take a listen.
Mothers out there are worried that we're going to have a draft, that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now.
It has been, and it will continue to be, and President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of this military operation. It's not part of the current plan right now, but the president, again, wisely keeps his options on the table.
There's one major difference between a talk that gets 4,000 views versus a talk that gets 4 million views, and it's not.
Wisely keeping his options on the table for a draft. It's first of all, politics-wise, think about that. That's going to rocket to every mom of a 17-year-old in the entire country.
All these young men who voted for Trump.
All these young men who voted for Trump. I have no words. By the way, I've given you my counterintuitive take. I support a draft for exactly this reason. I'm like, hey, if you want to send America's sons and daughters to the war, the whole population better be bought in, or people should riot over the.
Send Barron first, and then we'll follow.
Send them all. In the First World War, the Prime Minister of the UK, his son was killed on the front line. The entire highest echelon of society, all of their sons were killed and actually thrown into combat, not some rear action. And that showed that the society as a whole was actually into the war. And I'm saying the war was good, but that's the last time that we've ever seen anything like that. From that point forward, the elite of the elite, they always get in the rear echelon. Yep. And of course, since Vietnam in particular, the way we got around that one is all poor, young, black and white men are the people who went and fought and died in the war. Same thing, unfortunately, happened with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. The all-volunteer military force, they primarily targeted, there's a military culture in the South and a lot of these working class communities literally across America. And they're the ones who predominantly suffered while people like me, got to go to college. It's shameful, actually, that they're allowed to perpetuate something like this.
Yeah, my daughter's a senior in high school. The recruiters are at the high school all the time, and who is interested in that? The people who, they're not on the college track. They're looking at the economy. They're, this is a way to be able to have a stable job. And next thing you know, you're being sent off to fight some war for Israel in the Middle East.
How do the kids that are middle of the road, right? Graduating high school, going to community college, paying student loans just to go to community college. Where are they going to get jobs right now? At Walmart for $13 an hour, $14 an hour? Like, I at that point, if you're starting at that point, how do you ever get ahead? These kids are starting behind the 8 ball before they're even out of high school. This is why the average age of the first-time home builder or a buyer is 40 years old. Because these younger generations, unless they're making 120, 130 grand a year coming out of college, they can't do it. The number of people that have moved back in with their parents is at an all-time high. And that's the only way it could be done for the average middle-class citizen. By pooling your money together with your family to be able to do something. Forget getting married and having a kid. Unless you're graduating with a 4-year degree and coming out of college and starting off making 100 grand a year, you'll never be able to afford it at this point. It'll just never happen. They have successfully turned the majority of Americans into a renter class. And that's what they were trying to do. And they have succeeded.
I just want to drill down a little bit on why there is increasing likelihood, if not certainty, that U.S. ground troops are going to be on the ground. Because, I think part of why we're in this place at this point, and Robert Pape, Professor Pape, has been doing a lot of this analysis and predicting this for a while, which is why it's worth listening to what he says, is, you are not going to be able to accomplish either a regime change or destroying the nuclear material from the air. So, in Iraq, it took a year of searching the country to figure out there were no WMD. Okay, so you are not going to be able to figure out where it is. You are not going to be able to bomb it into oblivion or have confidence that you've bombed it into oblivion without being there on the ground. So option number one is you fail, right? Trump tacos, that's what I'm hoping for. Trump tacos said, bombs something or kills the next supreme leader and is like, okay, we're done. Great job, everybody. Let's go home. In that scenario, number one, Israel, of course, not going to be satisfied with that. Number two, it's not clear that Iran would accept that at this point because they're looking at this. Their new supreme leader just had his father, mother, wife, and son murdered by the U.S. and Israel. So I don't think he's going to be in like a really conciliatory mood here, number one. Number two, their strategic calculus now is that they have to hit us hard. They have to make us pay and suffer so that we don't do this again. So even if Trump tacos at this point, it is no guarantee that the thing is going to be over. So that's option number one. And of course, Trump, he wants to save face, et cetera. So, and you've got a lot of forces from Israel that are continuing to push in this direction. Number two is that you have some sort of ground invasion to try to obtain and destroy this nuclear material so that you can have your mission accomplished moment there. Number three, I guess, is that you deploy a nuke or something completely insane like that, which we're going to talk about a little bit more of the possibility of that in World War III, which quite frankly, at this point, you can't put anything with Netanyahu and Trump in charge. You cannot put anything off the table because the level of death and destruction that these men are comfortable with is completely insane. I'm
going to talk about that for a minute, right? So, we are bringing another aircraft carrier into the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. Our reserve troops are being notified to get their affairs in order. We have already deployed combat troops that I personally know within the last 48 hours. They are talking about bringing in this 82nd Airborne to go after this nuclear material that's on the ground. This war is not going to be short. It is going to just keep going. And this is the problem. We are using million-dollar missiles that we don't have enough of to try to shoot down $30,000 Iranian drones that they have thousands of. They have thousands of these drones. They have thousands of ballistic missiles. I'll show you guys images and video from last night. They are using cluster munitions, which go up into the atmosphere and then break off into 50 different rockets, and all of those rockets rain down on their target, and everything gets destroyed because none of the interceptor missiles can stop them. Iran has been stockpiling weapons and has been preparing for this for 40 years. We are not in a position technologically, we are not in a position logistically, and we just don't have the manpower to take on a regime change in a country of 90 million people. This is not Iraq. This is not Afghanistan. 90 million people. 90 million people live in Iran. And we have just killed the equivalent to their pope. They are all ready to die for what we did to their country. In what other time in world history have we taken out the head of a religion? If it wasn't a holy war then, before that, it surely has become a holy war. It's a holy war for the Iranians because we killed the equivalent to their pope. And it's a holy war for Philadelphia because their goal is to build the third temple on the Dome of the Rock. And if you don't believe that, I have plenty of clips of our politicians talking about rebuilding the third temple to usher in their Messiah, which will bring about a Jewish kingdom, which Christians and Muslims would be subservient to. So, I don't know how much propaganda has been going on in these mega churches like Calvary and TPUSA and the Christian Zionist movement. But for those of you who don't understand, the Messiah in that religion is the Antichrist in my religion. I don't quite understand how these two things coincide. Judeo-Christian values are it's a made-up word. It doesn't exist. It's an oxymoron.
I think Trump, thinking about his legacy, I don't think he cares whether that legacy is like as a good leader or as like notoriously evil leader. I think he's just more interested in leaving a gigantic mark on the world and wanting to be remembered. And so, listen, if you're going in that direction, being the first president since World War II to drop a nuke, again, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I don't.
If it was really about the oil, we wouldn't have been blowing up Iranian oil fields. It's not about the oil. The United States is a net producer of energy. We don't need Iranian oil, just like we didn't need Venezuelan oil. The United States has no business in this war, because there is literally nothing to gain other than the threats of sleeper cells, because our borders were open for 4 years. We've had 20 million undocumented people come across. Many of them were not of South American or Mexican descent. Many of them were Iranian nationals, Iraqi nationals, Chinese nationals, Russian nationals. I think the count was they believe there's over 1.5 million military-aged men from China that crossed the border during the Biden administration. 1.5 million. Now imagine if those 1.5 million were activated. What that could possibly do to our infrastructure, our energy grid. We have no idea who came across the border. So let's take the sleeper cell aspect out of it and look at the lone wolf radical, that the people that get radicalized from consuming this propaganda on the internet and allowing themselves to get brainwashed and going out to DC and lighting themselves on fire, right? I'm sure those are going to tick up. And then you have the traditional playbook of the false flag attack. Just like before 9/11, there was little to no support for any war or campaign in the Middle East. And what do you know? There was an attack big enough to unite the left and the right in support of military action. Now, if you look at the polling, it's about 80-20 to 90-10 against military action in Iran. The quickest way for them to turn that around is to, unfortunately, either cause or allow another 9/11 event to happen on U.S. ground, to American civilians to piss off the populace enough that they would support military action overseas. Now, granted, there are a lot of people that have woken up since 9/11, but I don't think they give a fuck. I don't think they care. After they blatantly covered up Charlie Kirk's murder because he was the loudest voice against a campaign against Iran, he told the president that it would destroy the base, and that's exactly what it's done. Charlie is conveniently silent right now. Well, how about that? This war that they must have been planning for quite a while, knowing that Charlie was the #1 voice against this war, knowing that they wouldn't be able to shut him up, that piece had to be removed from the chessboard. And if you expect anybody that's been paying attention to anybody doing any work on the investigation, and I'm not talking about the Candace Owen conspiracies or any of these other conspiracies, let's just look at the simple facts. If he was shot with a 30-06, it would have blown his head off. It would not have, the damage done would not have looked like it did that day. The explosive sniffing dogs were not able to find the rifle until after the feds got there, and the rifle was magically found. There are recordings of the police scanner from that day saying that there is a man fleeing in black tactical gear with a mask and a long gun. Multiple reports. And nothing has come from any of this. So, the chances that Tyler Robinson even if Tyler Robinson was involved, because there's a chance he was, and he was a legitimate patsy. The chance he did this by himself, without the help of a nation state, a 3-letter agency, are about 1 billion to 1. So, the 31-year-old kid that knocked on doors in Pennsylvania for months, that rallied the youth vote to get Trump into office because that's how he won, the youth turned out, he had to go.
Don't think that you can put
I wouldn't rule it out.
The table.
I actually wouldn't rule it out, not just because of Trump, but really because of Bibi. Let's put A7 up there on the screen. Trump says to the Times of Israel, it'll be a mutual decision with Netanyahu regarding when the war ends. So America literally, we're giving up all of our sovereignty. It's a mutual decision with Bibi Netanyahu, literally a client state, not exactly somebody who's an equal ally / partner in this entire thing. But he's the one who's gone all in. We're going to talk later about those oil strikes. It was Israel, apparently, and they're saying, oh, the U.S., they're very upset about the strike. Fake, whatever. If you're not going to do anything about it, don't leak it to Barack Ravid, just like Joe Biden's entire presidency did. But their level of barbarism, which we all saw. Remember, it's not just Gaza, because Gaza was barbarism at like a humanitarian level, but their barbarism in terms of their like gangster action in the whole region is really what showed. It's like, oh, these fuckers will do anything.
Yeah.
Like Doha, Qatar, Jordan, Lebanon, like all over the entire Middle East, Syria,
in Lebanon right now.
Literally, I mean, they're saying we're going to turn Dahia, area of Beirut, into Khan Yunis. This is Smotrich. They say this stuff out loud, how they're going to level. I've seen, hotels, buildings just completely collapsing in the middle of that city. So that is why I actually wouldn't rule out anything, because you never know where Israel will force your hand.
Well, and especially when you layer on the number of like religious fanatics who are wanting to bring about the end times. Like, how can you rule anything out? And that's, that's in Israel and that's here too. So, and I sort of feel like I had a blind spot for how much that ideology is significant, both in terms of some of the base of the Republican Party, but more importantly, in terms of the leadership. I mean, you think about Huckabee, you think about Hegseth, you think about the, Trump's spiritual advisor, and then he has this messianic vision of himself. This is scary stuff that we're playing with.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to...
All right, so let me go back. Let me see if they got anything new out. Desalination. Yeah, here we go. Desalination plant struck as UAE accuses Israel of disinformation. That checks out. This should be good.
Listen, it's called Connect Team, and it's insane. I don't do schedules or timesheets manually anymore. And it worked?
We have now had multiple attacks on regional desalination plants, including a strike on a significant one within Iran. This is obviously a war crime, but it's also, opened up a new escalatory front. This is actually something Professor Zhang talked to us about, how vulnerable this entire region is. And actually the GCC countries outside of Iran, they're the ones who are more reliant on these desalination plants because they lack freshwater sources within their own countries. Let's go ahead and take a listen to Trump getting asked about a U.S. attack on an Iranian desalination plant.
Iran today accused the U.S. of hitting a desalination plant in Iran, and they said that might open the door to other strikes on infrastructure, non-military.
Allow us to also open the door to other strikes against them.
Look, in response to that allegation, did the U.S. hit the desalination?
They are among the most evil people ever on earth. They cut babies' heads off. They chop women in half. What they did, take a look at October 7th. Take a look at what they've done over the last 47 years. So I know nothing about a desalinization plant other than to say, if they're complaining about a desalinization plant, we complain about the fact that they shouldn't be chopping babies' heads off, okay?
So complete deflection there, and then just uses some of the Israeli atrocity propaganda.
But what is he even talking about?
What he
what's the
linked it
reference?
to October
to Hamas?
7th. Yes, and he's claiming that Iran is now behind, which all of the reporting suggests Iran had nothing to do with October 7th, outside of Hamas obviously being allies of theirs. But just complete deflection. Uses all of this debunked atrocity propaganda, tries to make it so that Iran is directly responsible for October 7th, etc. And we're already seeing the consequences of this new escalatory front. Let's put B2 up on the screen. We now have Iran caused material damage to a desalination plant in Bahrain. First time, they say, an Arab country has reported Iran striking a desalination plant. So just to be clear, U.S. strikes an Iranian desalination plant, and then they say, okay, all right, game on. Let's go. Two can play this game as well. Let's put B3 up on the screen just so we can take a measure of how impactful this is. So these are the countries in the region listed out here by their level of dependency on these desalination plants, which of course convert salt water into fresh water. Okay, the most dependent, with 90% of their water coming from desalination plants, is Kuwait. Then at 86%, Oman. Then at 75%, Israel. Then at 70%, Saudi. At 60%, Bahrain, which was just struck. 50%, Qatar. 42%, the UAE. And Iran, now they have some water issues, but it is not nearly the level of the GCC or Israel, only 2%. Iran is, the tweet here says 3% dependent on desalination. The chart says 2%, U.S. allies in the region at 40 to 90%. Think about that. Think about that. If you are like Kuwait is basically wholly dependent on these plants, which are vulnerable, and the U.S., running out of interceptors and not doing a good job of defending these allies anyway, and your move is to attack an Iranian desalination plant, just completely opening up that front. This is extremely dire for these countries.
I'll also raise another one. Are we sure it was us? Are we sure it wasn't the Israelis? Because this is something that they love, right? To see the broadened war. And then immediately the strike that happened back on the GCC countries, as we've been talking about, they don't care at all about the GCC. They would be happy to see them collapse. Also, if it's funny, when I lived in Qatar, all of the Americans, we would always joke because gas was literally cheaper than water. Mm-hmm. So gas would be like 89 cents a gallon, whereas water would be $1 a gallon if you wanted to buy it from CVS or like some sort of grocery store. That is how different like things actually are over there, especially for fresh water. So you can think and just talk about how you've got only a certain amount of runway whenever it comes to water desalination. But the bigger point is about civilian infrastructure. So this strike on the water desalination plant and the closure of the Straits of Hormuz literally is a choke point for every single person who lives in the Gulf. Because think about it, everyone talks about the Straits of Hormuz just for oil, but it's not. Remember, they have huge, food. Like all their food comes in from there. Everything. If you've ever been to these countries, everything is imported. Literally, there's nothing out there. It's a desert for fresh food.
Not food sufficient, not water sufficient. Everything has to be imported.
Everything is either flown in or shipped in. And if 2 weeks is all they have for runway whenever it comes to food or water, I mean, it is a disastrous situation, especially for the civilian populations of a lot of not to mention, 1 million plus Americans who are all living in the country. Good luck getting out right now. Look at Dubai Airport. We're going to show you some of that stuff later on. I mean, the civilian infrastructure attacks, this is designed to inflict maximum damage on all of the population. So it's really dangerous.
And to your point about who did this, so put B6 up on the screen. The Israelis blamed UAE. Okay. UAE is completely denying that they struck this desalination facility. And they also hit back at what they described as inappropriate Israeli conduct. So, it definitely, there is a full-scale disinformation campaign coming from the Israelis. Why? Because they don't want this to be a limited conflict. Their incentives are all in the direction of dragging as many countries into this thing as they possibly can. So, I think given the breadcrumbs here, I think you're probably right. The most likely suspect here is Israel. But ultimately, it doesn't matter from whether it's the U.S. or Israel, because certainly the Iranians blame us for everything that's being done to them right now. And you already had, we're going to talk to Trita more about this, but you've already had, the Iranians made this sort of outreach like, okay, regional Arab countries, if you don't attack us, we're not going to attack you back. Trump immediately comes in and undermines that. And now, that very fragile sort of accord to limit this and contain the conflict and step back from the escalation chain that has already been completely destroyed. And clearly Israel here trying to keep that regional escalation going by saying, oh, it was UAE. They're denying it and saying, basically, you all are outrageous for the, the disinformation that you're spreading. We can put B7 up on the screen here as well to see, this analysis. Senior analyst on Israel, the crisis group says much of what Israeli media is reporting in Gulf states as disinformation appears to be part.
There's also reporting coming out of Dubai that the missile that struck the Dubai International Airport, the direction that it came from, it could not have come from Iran. So it was either an Israeli strike on the Dubai International Airport or an American strike on the Dubai International Airport. And I do not see for even a half a second that the U.S. would actively target allied countries' civilian infrastructure. That is 100% a IDF move. That is something they have done in the past. That is something that they are currently doing in Gaza. It is something that the military of Philadelphia is known for. They are known for false flags, civilian infrastructure, and blaming attacks on other people in the fog of war just to sow chaos in the region. Because the more chaos they can sow in the region, the better off it is. The better off it is. Because all it does is it causes strain between the United States and the Arab countries. The Israel does not like Qatar. Does not want the U.S. and Qatar relationship to be strong. Does not like the UAE. Does not want us to be allied with them. Israel wants complete hegemony in the region. What that means is they want to be the only superpower or the only power in the region that has the ability to strike and do any sort of military actions against any of these countries, and they do not want them to have the ability to defend themselves.
Part of an effort to escalate the war further between Gulf and Iran, and I think that's just like undeniable at this point what they are up to. But last thing here, put before up on the screen, you can see the way that the Iranians are reacting. So this is the foreign minister of Iran. He says the U.S. committed a blatant and desperate crime by attacking a freshwater desalination plant on Qasem Island. Water supply in 30 villages has been impacted. Attacking Iran's infrastructure is a dangerous move with grave consequences. The U.S. set this precedent, not Iran.
Mm-hmm. I said that at the beginning of the video. We did this first. The United States opened the door to attacking civilian infrastructure, which is a very ballsy move because the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, who am I forgetting? Dubai, all of them rely on desalination plants for drinking water for their population, and absolutely none of them have any sort of defenses. So all it would take is one Iranian drone to hit one of those targets and completely destroy a desalination plant. And now you are looking at a humanitarian crisis in one of our allied countries. How long do you think these allied countries are going to put up with their infrastructure being targeted by Iran before they say, you know what, America, you guys need to get the fuck out. You need to get the fuck out. You need to stop attacking Iran using the bases in our country. We don't want you here anymore. You guys need to go. It's coming. It's coming. The U.S. never should have attacked a salination plant. Never should have gone after the civilian infrastructure. And they have left all of our Gulf allies exposed, right? Because all the Gulf allies realize now that Israel is getting all the defensive weaponry and they are left wide open when it is their money that is going into Anthropic, Claude, Grok, ChatGPT, OpenAI. This is all money coming from the Gulf states. The TV deal with the Ellisons buying Warner Brothers, a quarter of that money was coming from Saudi sovereign wealth funds. And now they want to back out of the deal. So we are actively burning our allies in the region.
Yeah, and that's why they already attacked in what is it, in Bahrain?
Bahrain.
And just, I mean, Bahrain, remember, where are all those Americans who are in the Gulf? In Bahrain, like in Kuwait, and all of these countries are massively dependent on these water desalination. So I actually think, look, this is a broader war theory. Like, what do you do? Let's go back to the history of all warfare. It starts out just troop on troop. Then it's like, well, when you get gridlocked, what do? Oh, well, now we have to wage war on the enemy's ability to sustain the front. So what do? You no longer care as much about that. Air power is going to go and attack, remember, ball bearing factories and all of these places of infrastructure that sustain the war effort. This is what, if you think back to World War I, what did they do? Why did they have unrestricted submarine or U-boat bombing back then? To literally make sure that the Britons couldn't continue the war effort on their home island, so that they couldn't continue to send food or any supplies to the people who were on the front. The same things that the Allies did to the Germans. We would attack their food supplies and all these other things. Again, same thing. We wanted to cause mass famine to make sure that the population would stop supporting the war. This is what total war looks like. The Civil War, how did it end? We had to go through Atlanta and burn everything to the ground. This is the problem with sustaining these types of conflicts, and it's literally a fight literally to the death. And then you have to say, who has the ability and the will, or at the very least the will, to want to fight to the death? I don't even want to pay 50 cents more per gallon. No. The number of American dead for me is already it's 7 too high who are confirmed. Who knows what the real number is? So for the rest of us, we're out here being like, oh, diesel, $5 a gallon, huge disruption to our life. Jet fuel is going up. Anybody who wants to fly. By the way, our Asian allies are getting hammered. You know, the South Korean and the
If you're talking about the protests in Iran, there were provocateurs. There were Mossad agents on the ground, confirmed, that were smuggling weapons in, that tried to get some kind of uprising going. It didn't work. They weren't coordinated enough. The IRGC was too strong at the time, and any of those Iranians that picked up a gun got slaughtered.
South Korean index is down 15% over the last 5 days. They're getting destroyed because all their oil comes from the Straits of Hormuz. The Japanese, 90% of their oil comes from the Middle East. The Nikkei 225, I checked this morning, is down like 9% over the last 5 days. They're getting hammered, the entire world. For what? For literally nothing. And then you've got interceptor stocks that are all falling, civilian infrastructure. This is textbook for how a war, for any war which doesn't initially find smashing success in the first couple of days, it has to expand. It doesn't have a choice by strategic logic. I mean, theoretically you do, which is to say, oh my God, this was a horrible idea. Trump's not going to do that. And even if he wanted to do that, Israel's not going to let him at this point. And even if they did, then what are the Iranians just going to say? Yeah, okay. They're like, no, we're not done with you yet.
And normalizing those attacks on civilian infrastructure, that is to Iran's benefit, because this is the sort of stuff that's very easy to attack with the drone, right? And so this is a game they can play all day long. And so, what have you accomplished so far in this war? You have decapitated the head of the regime. Now you've got a harder line person who has been named as the supreme leader, the son of the previous Ayatollah, who just had his whole family murdered by you. So congratulations. You've got another Khamenei who is more hardline than the previous one, who's now in charge. Okay. You've likely unified, actually, the Iranian people behind this government, given that they are under siege and under attack. You have now your economy being destroyed in real time. I mean, true threat of like a global depression situation already, just with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. You have failed to accomplish whatever the goals are. Not that you've been real clear about what those goals even are, so it kind of makes them unaccomplishable. But you have not collapsed the regime. There isn't civil war. There is not certainly a regime change. You do not have control of the nuclear materials. They continue to be able to, to strike within Israel. I'm seeing lots of reports this morning about attacks from Iran in Israel and also on GCC member states as well. So, and now you're in sort of this bind where you're very likely to end up sending ground troops in and having many, many more Americans dead. That is what's been accomplished, quote unquote, so far in this war. It could not be more of a cluster. Like, it's just an absolute disaster and very hard to see how we get out of this anytime soon, because Trump, there are no good options for Trump to walk away. And as I said before, even if Trump tried to walk away, not at all clear that the Iranians would be like, okay, good, let's go back to the way things were, because they know that they would just be courting another attack yet again in the future.
Such a disaster. All right, let's get to oil. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
I've been helping people build AI-assisted agencies where AI handles the client fulfillment. Let me explain how this works. You choose from proven service categories that businesses purchase already. So things like content creation, lead generation, advertising.
Lindsey Graham, Iran is a holy war to remake the Middle East. Let's cover this.
So guys, increasingly, American officials and military commanders are framing our war with Iran in religious holy war terms. You also obviously have the Israelis framing things in religious terms. You have the Iranians, which is literally a theocracy. So to help us understand what the hell is going on with all of this, we could think of no one better than our own co-host, Emily Jashinsky, who also is host of After Party with Emily. Great to see you, Emily.
Good to see you, Em.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course. I need you to explain all of this to me because it's very disturbing and very confusing to me. So I'm just going to run through a bunch of things that have just happened on the American Christian nationalist side, and then you can break down for me, what they're thinking, how deep this ideology goes, etc. So let's go ahead and start here with Lindsey Graham, who has been a...
Hey guys, I know I haven't asked yet, but if you could share, subscribe, comment, put the notification bell on, do all that stuff. Help me get my channel out there, man. Help me grow. Charlie Kirk taught me that the one thing I have is my voice, and I will use it because I feel like I need to, and I feel like I need to help wake the American people up. And it doesn't matter to me if I make one person, 2 people, 5 people wake up to it. As long as I can make a difference in somebody, that's really all I care about. Because we are no longer a sovereign nation. And we need to get our nation back. And we need to stop sending our troops to fight for other countries' wars when we have our own problems here at home. And that is what I am about. That is what American First, Free the Republic is about. Yeah. So if you guys could like this, share this, comment, boost me in the algorithm, help me out, I would appreciate it. I appreciate you guys.
Primary mover and shaker in terms of, for years, but especially under this Trump administration, pushing towards this war. And he is explicitly framing it as a religious war. Let's take a listen to that.
This is a religious war. Who wins it at the end of the day? Do the radical Islamic terrorists who want to kill all the Jews because God told them to? Who want to kill me because I'm an infidel? Who want to purify Islam, to reject moderation and make everybody a jihadist? This is a big deal. I'll deal with Section 230. So what we're facing right now is a moment of decision that will set the course of the future of the Mideast for 1,000 years.
It's a religious war, and if that's not enough for you, here is Speaker of the House Mike Johnson framing this also in terms of his problems with the Iranians' religion.
They have been, and they say the quiet parts out loud. They wanted to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, and they'd like to take us out as well. We're the great Satan in their analogy and their misguided religion, and there was no way to appease them.
Misguided religion. Okay, we've got Senator Kramer, when confronted by Code Pink activist Medea Benjamin, also talking about our religious obligations to Israel. Let's listen to that.
Does Israel have nuclear weapons? Listen, the United States and Israel are ironclad partners. We need them in the Middle East. We need them to be strong. We have a biblical responsibility to them as well as an allied responsibility. Israel, we should never sever that relationship.
Biblical responsibility to Israel. This United States senator obviously just took a vote on War Powers resolution. He says our responsibilities there are biblical. Let's take a look at F6. There's a report that military commanders, multiple of them, are telling troops that President Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran, to cause Armageddon, and mark his return to Earth. So you have a bunch of complaints coming in to nonprofit organizations saying that, you know, this whole separation of church and state thing is not being held true to, as you have a number of military commanders framing this war as, you know, a biblical religious conflict. You have let's do F5 next, guys. This is Paula White. This is Trump's spiritual advisor to get a sense of the, you know, what's going on here behind the scenes, the type of, you know, spiritual guidance that the President of the United States is receiving. Let's listen to that.
Strike and 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 strike until you have victory. For every enemy that is aligned against you, let there be that we would strike the ground, for you will give us victory, God. I hear a sound of abundance of rain. I hear a sound of victory. I hear a sound of shouting and singing. I hear a sound of victory. Angels are being dispatched right now. Hamanda aka ata raka teda baka sanda ata ambo osa kata rite. For angels have even been dispatched from Africa right now. Africa right now.
Is she speaking in tongues? Like, what the fuck was that? Does anybody know?
Now, Africa right now, from Africa right now.
And finally, the Secretary...
Have you seen the remix of that clip, by the way?
I have not, but I would like to.
Yeah, send it over.
They're bangers. Yeah.
Finally, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who has the, you know, Crusader Cross, he was deemed an extremist and not allowed to participate in protection for the Biden inauguration because of his tattoos. Here he is talking about, you know, some of this biblical prophecy, and including the miracle of reconstructing the third Temple of Solomon. He also reportedly at a bar previously was chanting "Kill all Muslims." So this is our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth.
And today, Jennifer and I and others had a chance to go see the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, the Western Wall tunnels, so much of the old city. And as you stand there, you can't help but behold the miracle before you. And it got me thinking about another miracle that I hope all of you don't see too far away. Because 1917 was a miracle, 1948 was a miracle, 1967 was a miracle, 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle, and there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible. I don't know how it would happen. You don't know how it would happen, but I know that it could happen.
So, Emily, why is this increasingly being framed as a religious conflict, holy war from the American side?
Well, what's interesting about that last Hegseth clip is that was around the time where the embassy was moved officially by the first Trump administration to Jerusalem. And that's when we saw a lot of this flaring up as well. A lot of people speaking just like Pete Hegseth did. And Hegseth in that clip is somewhat careful. He doesn't say why there should be a third temple, which from the dispensationalist position. So if you're an evangelical Christian, there's a sect. It's sort of informal. It's taught in some seminaries, but it's kind of a pop culture thing too. There's a movement called dispensationalism, and it's been around a while. It's had waning popularity in America through different periods, but it's not just about the end times, but basically prescribes different dispensations of history, and one of those dispensations would be the third temple getting rebuilt and that ushering in the end times. And one of the easiest ways to think about it is you substitute everywhere in scripture for everywhere you see in scripture Israel, you substitute that for the nation, the current nation of Israel, so political Israel. And if you read scripture that way, that the nation of Israel that was established in the last 100 years, you can see why people, especially when the embassy was being moved to Jerusalem, look at this in evangelical circles as being fulfillment of scripture. Now, I'm a non-denominational evangelical. I grew up Missouri Synod Lutheran, so we weren't dispensationalist, but it was a huge pop culture movement at the time in the 90s. And so a lot of people in conservative Christian circles grew up with like the Left Behind books, the movies. They were very popular at the time. And Pete Hegseth's church is not dispensationalist. I don't know where he was going to church in 2018. I think that's why he was careful with it. So some of this is flirting with people who are dispensationalist. The movement has kind of been waning since the 90s, since the early aughts. There aren't a ton of people, there aren't a ton of people I know in evangelical circles who are still dispensationalist my age, but it's a lot of boomers, a lot of people who, that's how they've always seen Israel. The last thing I'll just add on this point, because there's a lot more to talk about, but the last thing I'll add on this point is if you grew up, part of your life, there wasn't a country called Israel, then again, you could see how it's easy to read into some of this, the fulfillment of scripture, when suddenly there is a country called Israel that kept surviving after all of this conflict. So that's where some of this is coming from. I think it is theologically very misguided, but that's a little bit of the background on the movement that fuels some of this.
But let's get into the nitty gritty. So Tucker did a whole episode about this today, which I also recommend people go and listen to. Why do they even want the third temple to be built? Because as he was saying, it's actually kind of violates their own scripture about the way that they see Jesus as the coming of God, but it's very important in the Torah and to the rebuilding of the temple to Jewish theology, and that there's kind of basically an intersection within the dispensationalist framework about bringing about the end times and apocalypse and the return of Christ to earth. So get into some of that because, obviously not exactly my area of expertise.
No, that's exactly right. Because that's part of this big debate in Christian circles about dispensations. So there's something called premillennial dispensationalism, there's something called postmillennial dispensationalism, and then there's amillennials. But what that means is you're reading into scripture, and a lot of these prophetic verses are, they're vague, and that's part of the, I think, theological problem with carving out dispensations is it's very clear in the Gospels, for instance, that you're not going to know. There will be signs, but you're not going to know. So if you're reading really specific things into the dispensations, I mean, my perspective on that is it's not prescribed in the Gospels. It's not the way that Christ talked about the end times. But there are different dispensations. So if you're a premillennial dispensationalist, you believe that this ushers in a millenarian time where Christ returns and the Jews are Ryan will say, a lot of Christians, he'll say it's like using Jewish people as cannon fodder for the apocalypse. That's how Ryan's described it before. I think the charitable way that a lot of evangelicals would say is actually that they believed the Jewish people are going to be protected and are going to be, when Christ returns, are going to be ushered in to the true church with Jesus. And that's where this particular plot of land, which is Temple Mount, as you mentioned, Sagar, if you have a third temple, then Christ returns. It's a sign of the return. And you can read into Daniel, you can read into the book of Revelation, you can read into all kinds of different prophecies. I mean, that's why Numbers 19, the red heifer, which Ryan and I have covered before, that's why there's the temple institute in Jerusalem that is preparing things like the Ark of the Covenant to exact biblical proportions, the red heifer to exact biblical proportions, because they believe they want to re-enter the temple, and you can't without the red heifer, for example. So that means that they're fully intent on building the third temple, which then brings us into conflict, obviously, with Islam, where you have the Dome of the Rock, Al-Aqsa, on that exact same territory, and people who are willing to fight to the death to protect that from being rebuilt. So a little bit of a tangent, but basically there are dispensations that people believe in, and part of it is the Jewish people rebuilding the third temple, that ushering in the apocalyptic reign of Christ.
Yeah. Well, and look, here's my thing. It's a free country. People can believe whatever they want to believe. It becomes my problem when policymakers are asserting that this ideology is being used to justify another endless war in the Middle East. And, partly, I think all of us have been trying to read the tea leaves and get whatever intel we can, read the reporting about, what is going on here? Why, even though the political people and the military people and all our allies in the region and the Europeans are don't do this, why we still did this? And I'm curious for your view on how influential this religious, ideological view is. How many people in high levels of the Trump administration are in favor of this war because they want to precipitate the end times like these military commanders are telling our troops.
I wonder about that too. I think it's sort of less the dispensationalists and more the people who believe that you have to see. It's overlaps with dispensationalism, but people who believe that you have to literally interpret Israel as the modern nation state of Israel in Scripture. So that's where I would look at a Pete Hegseth, for example, and say, I don't think that he's a dispensationalist. He goes to Doug Wilson's church. I don't think he believes that we have some moral obligation to usher in this dispensation of the end times. I do think he believes very strongly that everywhere we see Israel in Scripture, we're not just talking about the lowercase n nation of the Jewish people. We are talking about the literal political nation state of modern Israel. And I do think there are a lot of people, Mike Huckabee, and Huckabee has played very carefully with dispensationalist rhetoric. My strong guess is that Mike Huckabee is a dispensationalist, but he's also I've gone back to when he ran for president in the 2008 cycle to try and decode and get him explicitly talking like a dispensationalist. He does talk like a dispensationalist, but he's been careful to whether or not to fully embrace that politically. But I'm pretty sure Mike Huckabee, you could probably put him in that vein. You can definitely put him in the vein of somebody who substitutes the nation of Israel in Scripture for the modern political nation state of Israel. Yeah. And I actually think that's probably even more powerfully driving the people in the Trump administration's policy toward Israel. We know Donald Trump doesn't. I mean, Paula White could say whatever she wants to Donald Trump. He doesn't believe any of it. He thinks it's wacky. There's no question in my mind.
Yeah,
but
it's like a tacit alliance. But I mean, the Speaker of the House, you've got senators we just played for you. They believe this stuff. Inside Israel, too, I wanted to flag this, like you said, about the Temple Institute. Let's go ahead and put F7 up on the screen. So here you have soldiers of the IDF, and they're tweeting out the Temple Institute, saying soldiers of the IDF are fighting with all their might, hearts and souls for the land of Israel, the people of Israel, and the God of Israel. This soldier made that clear when he attached an arm patch depicting the Holy Temple and the word Devir, ancient Hebrew for the Holy of Holies. Can we show the patch, guys? Please, just to show everybody what they have on their arm. And then you also had previously members of the IDF and others put, for example, like Greater Israel patches on their uniform to signify what they are voting for. So can you explain why this is so significant, like you just said, to the Temple Institute? What is the Temple Institute? Why is it so powerful?
Yeah, the Temple Institute is a really important aspect of all of this because it's this physical manifestation of the theology here of people, I would argue, like a Ben Gavir who goes and prays on the Temple Mount. So that's not, you're not supposed to do that, but has been pushing the limits, pushing the limits, pushing the limits. This is actually what was cited by Hamas when they talked about Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. That is what they called October 7th. And part of their justification for that awful attack was that they saw encroachment on this area. And so that's where this gets really, like, politically and on a human level very scary, because this is sacred ground, obviously, to three faiths and eschatologically significant for three faiths. So for people who are supportive of the Temple Institute, which is funded by billionaires, they have literally been going through the exact specifications and verses like Numbers 19. They have been, you mentioned the holiest of holies. That's supposed to be in the temple. That's where God resides, in the temple. That's where you have to build that place. This is throughout the Old Testament. You build that place for God. This is the Ark of the Covenant has been built to specifications by the Temple Institute. They have made preparations for Israel to take that ground, basically, and rebuild the third temple. So it's actually not a crazy abstract thing. This is in motion. It is funded by politically significant billionaires. And people try to keep, my sense is that in Israel, far-right politicians try to kind of keep a little bit of distance from it because it's such a hot, kinetic question from the Temple Institute itself. But this is happening. And there are people who are obviously supportive of it. And so if Israel were to get this ground, they would be rebuilding the third temple and expecting, in some cases, to be like operating with third temple Judaism like immediately. And I think a lot of far right Jews absolutely would support that. Religious Jews would absolutely support that. I mean, it is in their scripture. Literally. So that's where this can come to a head very, very quickly in very, very ugly ways.
And do those donors overlap with Republican Party or Donald Trump donors?
My guess is probably. The Washington Post did a long story back in 2013 on who was funding the Temple Institute, and I would assume that some of the same people have since been active in the Trump world. One of the reasons I would assume that is because we saw, again, some of this overlap when he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. And then obviously with Mike Huckabee now being the ambassador, he's not just an advisor, he's not just like Paula White, he's literally the ambassador to Israel, which is, so yes, I would assume so. But it's, I think they try to be kind of low key. So it's hard to know exactly.
Well, one person who hasn't been that low key about certain of his views is Pete Hegseth. Just to go back to him because he is the Secretary of War. He reportedly, I don't know if it's true or not, he's pushing for a ground invasion in Iran. He wrote a book in 2020 called American Crusade. In it, he argued that, quote, Christian crusaders pushed back the Muslim hordes in the 12th century. American crusaders will need to muster the same courage against Islamists today. And so he's been quite explicit about his view that he wants another like Crusades 2.0 and that he views it in explicitly religious terms. So talk to us about what we know about.
Bibi is truly turning this into a holy war and telling Trump that he has been anointed to be the one to be responsible for the building of the third temple. So they have Trump brainwashed to the point that he thinks he is going to be a pivotal point in the Jewish religion because the building of the third temple ushers in the Jewish Messiah. So they have convinced Trump, right, which doesn't seem too hard to do with the size of that fucking guy's ego, to go in, attack Iran, and help with the building of the third temple. What are the problems with this? One, it's one of the top 3 holiest sites in all of Islam. Top 3. It would be like them going to the Vatican and destroying the Vatican archives. That's what we could equate that to. So, what do you think the Catholics would do if the Muslims destroyed the Vatican archive? How do you think that would go over? Probably not well. The Iranians believe this is a holy war because we have killed their pope. So you have both sides using religion to manipulate, to get support for the war. Now, where I draw a line is the Christian preachers, the Rob McCoys of the world, the Christian pastors that are Zionists, that are pushing for the rebuilding of the third temple. If you're a Christian and you know your Bible, you know that the covenant with Abraham was broken when the Jews decided to reject Jesus as their Messiah. And a new covenant was formed between Jesus and all of his followers. That's why Jesus says in the Bible, the only way to the Father is through me. So all of these people are using Christians' faith manipulating they're manipulating the way it is presented on purpose to gain support for Philadelphia's cause in this fight. I draw a line there. If you are a Christian pastor and you are using your congregation's faith and weaponizing it to change the meaning of the Bible and change the meaning of how it is supposed to be perceived, you are doing so much damage to innocent Christians that are turning to you to be their spiritual leader. What gives you the right to manipulate Scripture for a political movement? What gives them this right?
His ideology, as he is clearly a key influential figure behind the scenes, making important decisions about how this all unfolds.
Riverside helps with the entire process of making a podcast, from recording to edit and even generating clips.
And just by the way, while you were saying that, Crystal, I did look up some of the Temple Mount donors. Yes, and the instinct that you had is correct. It's not entirely surprising. Overlap with Trump world. One of them actually quit the Columbia University Board of Directors over post-October 7th things on that campus. So Hegseth, I think, I mean, this is, again, right now, post-October 7th, there are people who are actually in the bucket that are critical of Israel from a Christian perspective that might be more like aligned with actually Tucker on this, but who are frustrated with Tucker for urging more, I don't even know what the right word is, tolerance of Islam. Maybe that's the right way to put it. Because, you know, Rod Dreher writes about this a lot. He's an Orthodox Christian, but he writes about how the civilizational conflict between Islam and Christianity is inevitably coming to a head in the 21st century. So Hegseth is in that bucket. I think it's not necessarily an eschatological end times type thing, but it is definitely Christianity has been too permissive of the spread of Islam would be the line for too long, and you need to sort of prepare for that fight because it's inevitably surging in the years ahead. That's how I would describe the perspective of people like Pete.
I think that makes sense. Yeah. Well, crazy stuff. At least from my perspective, you know, like you said, it's a free country. You can believe anything you would like. It is a little worrying whenever it starts to affect our foreign policy. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say also, we didn't even cover the eschatological perspective of like the IRGC, which has in recent years been looking specifically at a lot of this as like the Mahdiism and the 12th Imam. And we could have Muslim guests explain this better than I can. But that particular slice of land, which is in contest right now, is so tied up in some extremist eschatologies, some mainstream eschatologies around the world. So it's such a fragile situation.
I think next week we have a guest on.
I do want to ask you one question about that, though, because obviously we assassinated the Ayatollah, who was not only a political leader, but also a Shia religious leader. You know, I've seen some analysis that, you know, basically like, okay, you've now turned this guy, who was an old man and probably dying within the year, you've now turned him into a martyr. And this is going to have significance for Shia Muslims, not only in Iran, but across the region. You may see some signs of that already since we have riots in Bahrain, which is sort of a 50-50 roughly Muslim, Shia Muslim country. So, you know, what do you make of that analysis and the significance of our assassination of the Ayatollah?
Yeah, stuff about like Mahdiism is often peddled by neoconservatives who are pushing for exactly what just happened, war with Iran and heightened conflict with Iran. I look at that as actually evidence to the contrary, which is that you are not going to bomb away this theology that is now deeply ingrained by your own arguments in the IRGC, which is, it's not 100% support of Iranians, of course not, but it's not an insignificant portion of the country either. We've seen people weeping in the streets over the death of the Ayatollah. So it's not like you're bombing away entire swaths of Iran that are supportive of the Ayatollah and this theology. So that to me is also, completely backwards, but you end up again with potential for an ISIS to come out of a power vacuum where you have radicalized people who are because they feel like this just confirmed what the Ayatollah was saying about him being a martyr and him being a historic religious figure, which obviously he is, but in that kind of theological sense as well. So it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. And that has been used as evidence why we should act. I think it's scary that you would have anybody with nuclear weapons who has that eschatological claim on the land. There are many countries at this point who have people in their countries with those types of beliefs. United States, Israel. So missiles in the hands of people who believe that destruction of Jewish people helps bring about the Mahdi, who helps bring about that dispensation in Islamic theology. No, it's not comfortable to the rest of the world either, but did you just make that more potent? Serious question. Right. Obviously, serious question.
Yeah, and what I had read.
All right, guys, I gotta jump off this stream. I have to go to the dentist and get my teeth drilled. Not really looking forward to this. To the quote, Andrew, you said Trump said the war was over a few days ago. I think Trump is basing his intelligence on the intelligence that he is receiving from Philadelphia. And I do not trust Philadelphia to be giving Trump accurate intel. And we would be going to them for almost all of our intelligence on the ground because they have Mossad agents all over the country of Iran. So we would be using their intelligence, and it does not seem the intelligence that they have provided to our military has been correct at all. Not even a little bit. So, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Guys, thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell. Help me get out there, man. I will be on here as much as I can and present to you an honest take of what's going on in the world from an American first standpoint, from a American first political view. I'm tired of sending my friends and my friends' kids off to war to die for other countries when we're falling apart here at home. It needs to stop, and we need to regain the Republic. We need to free the Republic. That's why the name of this channel is America First FTR. It could stand for a lot of things. Fuck the rest. Forget the rest. But I think Free the Republic is the right one. So, the name of this channel is going to be America First, Free the Republic. I hope you guys have a good afternoon. I will jump on back on here later today. Again, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know where you're from. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I suck, if you think I'm on point. Just drop whatever, man. But anything would be greatly appreciated. I hope you guys have a great day. I will be catching up with you guys later tonight. I'll give you a heads up before the stream starts. Have a good day, guys.